Hey folks, welcome back to Leader Talk. My name's SEAC Retired John Wayne Troxell. Appreciate you coming from another episode here. This is a special episode for me because I have a special guest today. He's a very close personal friend of mine, a colleague of mine for years at the strategic level when I was the SEAC. And he is probably my favorite Marine in history, with all due respect to guys like Brian Zickafoose and Tony Spadaro, and even my boss, Joe Dunford, and my other boss, Jim Mattis. This is probably my favorite Marine. My guest today is Master Gunnery Sgt Retired, Scott Stalker. Scott, welcome to the show, brother.
John, thank you for having me. There's no way I can be put above those names, but I'm honored to be named in that company. Thank you.
Well, it's good to see you, brother, and good to see you with a little chin music going on there. Clear indicator that you are retired now. What a career you had, brother. I mean, well over 30 years in the Marine Corps. One of the few ever in the history of the U.S. Armed Forces two-time Combatant Command Senior Enlisted Leaders. At U.S. Cyber Command, National Security Agency, and then finishing off your career at U.S. Base Command. So kind of talk to us a little bit about your career, and why you joined the Marine Corps, why you chose the path you did, and then, how it all ended up, brother.
Yeah, thanks, John. It was a dream come true, quite frankly. I joined the Corps for no other reason. I wasn't trying to go to college. I didn't want to do any of that. I want to go to war. That's the honest truth. I missed Desert Storm. Because of my age, I wasn't old enough to go to Desert Storm, and I wanted to serve my country and fight for my country. I signed up to go in the infantry, and I've told this story a few times before. You may have heard this. I was sober, and I got a good score on the ASVAB that day, so they put me in Intel instead. They tricked me into that, but I had a great career in Intel, and to the point you're getting at is towards the end of my career, I was afforded many opportunities to serve. One of which Ron Green allowed me to do as a Sergeant Major of the Marine Corps, to serve as the Command Senior Enlisted Leader of the Defense Intelligence Agency. And really from that point forward, I was afforded opportunities to continue on in the strategic environment at the National Security Agency, at United States Cyber Command, and then culminating my career at United States Space Command. And so I got to see the strategic environment. But what I think was important to that is I grew up predominantly in the infantry and a lot of time early on out at sea. So I understood how all of those decisions impacted the warfighter on the ground. And I tried to always, when I had a seat at the table, keep that in mind, that the decisions we are making aren't for us. They impact the troops at the lowest level, and keeping that warfighter in that aggressive bias for action mindset. And so, I retired officially on the 31st of January, 2024, after 31 years. And it was an honor of a lifetime to serve and to wear the Marine Corps uniform.
Okay, that's awesome, brother. I mean, very successful career, 31 years in the Marine Corps. That is awesome. And then the way you finished off, brother, it was just John's opinion, but, we first met when I took over as the SEAC, and you were the J2 Senior Enlisted Leader on the Joint Staff, and you just kind of fit into the joint world like one of those round pegs, brother. You are a career Marine. You are a proud Marine. But every time I saw you operating around the other services, you were absolutely comfortable. Do you think there's an art to that? Do you think there are some senior enlisted leaders that are so parochial, lack of a better term, closed-minded, that they feel uncomfortable being around people outside of their own service?
I think we sometimes lose an understanding and the understanding of why the military exists, and it is to fight and win our nation's wars.
Yeah.
And so, me being a Marine, I'm a contributor to that, and ultimately, the military is, there to support our elected leadership, and in this case, the President of the United States, if he has us move forward. And so, sometimes people get a little bit too micro invested in what they do, or myopically viewing what they do. And also and you've seen these other guys out there, is they often want credit for what they do.
Yeah.
And not that I don't like a pat on the back, or, whenever you were the SEAC, you would say, good job, I'd appreciate that sort of thing. But it really, we need to realize we're contributing to our nation's end state, what we're trying to achieve, whether that's an ally in a partnership or whether we're taking someone's life on the battlefield, whatever we're trying to do. And so I just thought the art of it was that it didn't matter who got credit. It's just a matter of getting it done, being a good teammate, whether I'm in charge or I'm, given the mission to execute. Just try to do the best you can. Don't worry about credit. That credit sometimes comes. Hey, sometimes it doesn't. Who cares? Know that you did your best. And for me, I had great leadership there, whether it was you as a SEAC, General Dunford. I mean, you think of the team there, the Secretary of Defense, and even when you left, I had that relationship with CZ when he was a SEAC, and the chairman. So it was just about my job was to do this, and I'm going to do that because I don't need you as a SEAC to worry about that. I got it. I'm the J2 SCA. Let me handle that job or whatever else. And then the other thing too, I think folks attempt to do sometimes is they focus too much on what is next instead of just dominate your battle space, do your job exceptionally well, and then you can do other things. And I learned that a lot at MARSOC. The maturity of a special operator was really, I don't need you to kick the door in. That's not what my job is. I need you to be an excellent intelligence professional and provide that support and let the person who's going to kick the door in do that. Let the administrator do that, but just dominate your battle space and do your job as well as you can. And I think as long as people keep that in mind, man, that's the Patriot way. That's the do your job. That's blocking and tackling. That's the basics and fundamentals. And we're going to be just fine if we can continue on that way.
Awesome. I love it, brother. Now, as we all know, all good things come to an end, and for you, both of us, our careers are behind us now. So talk to me a little bit about the transition process and how your transition went for you.
Yeah, you had mentioned before I got to do a second COCOM. I didn't get the first one right. I had to go back and retrain. But in all seriousness, I knew that there would be one more opportunity potentially, and it was a long shot. So I had to be prepared for transition. And so a couple years in, I realized that I can do my job exceptionally well, but I can also go to medical and get my medical stuff taken care of. I can also think about life insurance and these other things that I will need on the outside world. And so I set out on a path to do that. I created my LinkedIn account 2 years ago. I started networking. I knew what I wanted to do. I knew what I didn't want to do. And I built that network. So the day I left, right the day after my retirement ceremony on the 8th of August, I didn't have a job. I didn't have a house. I had my wife, my 3 daughters, and a minivan, and we set out. And I wasn't worried at all because I knew I had a strong network and the opportunities would come. And so now, I've got my own YouTube channel as well. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm continuing to network. I consult for several companies. I'm on the board of over 5 companies. And I'm also a senior fellow at the National Defense University. So I've got a lot going on, and I'm doing an awful lot. Quite frankly, I could be busier than I was in retired life. I throttle back occasionally. I go a little harder sometimes so that I can maintain balance with my family. And I'm not trying to talk anyone into retirement or to BART active duty service or reserve or whatever, but I love it. I absolutely love the retired life. I love being in charge of my own destiny, to drive as hard as I want, to do as much as I want. It's a really enjoyable thing because, and I say that, if you look at the way the military is set up, predominantly a Napoleonic rank structure, and most people think, okay, if you're an E9, this is as high as you can go, and this is what we expect of E9s. And I don't know about you, John, but I always felt there was a lot more I could do as a Master Gunnery Sergeant. I had been a Master Gunnery Sergeant for 14 years, an E9 for 14 years. And I knew there was more that I could do, but oftentimes they would have the general or the admiral do that because traditionally that's who could do that. But I always thought, wow, I could be an operations officer. I could be a commander. I could do an awful lot. And maybe that's arrogant. And I know I didn't have to go through a lot of the things they went through, but I saw so many things, especially over my last 7 years at the strategic environment, that now that I'm retired, I'm able to capitalize on that because in retired life, you either show up and execute or you don't. And you get paid if you can do it or you don't. And that's what I love about it. It's about meritocracy. It's about performance. And I love it. I genuinely love being retired.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think, when you have a plan and you have goals and you kind of have a vision what you want to do post-military life, you don't look back, you look forward. You know, and I use the
Yeah.
term all the time, don't be lost in your museum. And I think there's too many of our peers that leave the military and they want to hang on to what they were. Now, don't get me wrong, a lot of the reason that you and I have had opportunities out here is what we did at the strategic level, you know, that really made us marketable post-military life. But I think some people are still focused on, you know, making sure Joe's got their headgear on at the gas station and everything, and they forget that retiree ID card gives them zero, you know, authority to enforce any kind of regulation, you know. So it's great
Right.
to hear there. So let me ask you something, Scott. What advice would you give to a retiring senior enlisted leader, potentially combatant command, you know, nominative level guy, as they're going through their transition into post-military life? What's one key piece of advice you would give them?
I found that spending a little bit of time alone, I went to a cabin in West Virginia, and I kind of isolated for a little bit, and I wanted to define who Scott Stalker was and what I genuinely enjoyed. I took a test called the Clifton Strength Test as I went through a program, the Honor Foundation in transition, and it really locked me in and identified what my strengths were, but also what I wouldn't enjoy. And so I would spend a lot of time soul searching. What do you want to do? Do you want to, because you can work 70, 80, 100 hours a week, and you can also not do anything at all. I would spend all my time focused on what do you want to do, and then put a plan together to do that. I'm traveling more than I did on active duty. I'm doing far more than I did on active duty. I consult for a number of companies. Hey, for what it's worth, I'm making a lot more money too, and I'm fine with saying that because I work my butt off to do that. But I'm also helping out a lot more people. When people reach out to me on LinkedIn, or friends that you and I know text me and want some advice, I'm there for them as well, just as you are. So I say, really get to know who you are, know what your strengths are, know what you want to do, and then you got to put a plan together to get that. All right. And reach out to veterans. Say, hey, I see that you started your own company. How did you do that? What should I think about? Right. Because I didn't reinvent the wheel out here. I mean, there's a lot of consultants, but I'm doing it a certain way, and I can help people do that. So I think it's really, it's looking inside your soul, in your heart, talking to your family if you have one, and then putting together a plan to execute what you want to do. And also a timeline, because I'm probably not doing this for the next 50 years, but I have a plan for the next 15.
There you go, brother. You know, just to close this segment out here, you know, when I retired, people told me generally your brand has a 5-year plan, you know, and, you know, the minute you retire, it kind of takes off and everything. But then at about 2.5 years, it starts ebbing. And, you know, and then by year 5, people start forgetting about who you are. I think that's a bunch of BS, man, because I'm starting my 5th year of retirement. And I am this year already, I am more busier than I am any other year. So I love it that when you say you have a 15-year plan, because I'm right there with you, brother. So anyways, we're going to take a quick break, Scott. We're going to allow our sponsors to give a word here, and then we'll come back in the next segment. I want to get your views on the operational environment, some of the key issues affecting the U.S. military right now. So let's take a quick break, folks, and let's hear from our sponsors at Downrange Supplements.
Downrange Supplements. As the brand of the troops, we produce only the highest quality supplements conducive to mission effectiveness. Whether it's our fully dosed pre-workout, recovery and rehydration, or Mermite protein, it's time to continually improve your fighting position with Downrange Supplements. Go to www.downrangesups.com today and take your training to the next level.
Hey folks, welcome back to Leader Talk. I'm SEAC Retired John Wayne Troxell. My guest today is Master Gunnery Sgt Retired Scott Stalker, 2-time Combatant Command Senior Enlisted Leader, an all-around great guy and a great Marine too. So Scott, welcome back for segment 2. Brother, you and I spent a lot of time, I mean almost all of our time, focused on the operational environment and how our troops are operating there. I want to get your opinion on this large-scale this long-term power competition that we have going on. You know, the National Defense Strategy, the Secretary of Defense outlines China as our pacing challenge, and now and in the future. And as we look to compete with somebody like China, how do you think this, one, how do we get after this? But two, how do we continue to build competitive advantages or gain competitive advantages through this competition phase?
Yeah, John, I think this is the question that we all need to be having, especially senior enlisted leaders and commanders. And it's one that when we do, we have to look at it through both lenses, our own and then the competitor. And I would offer that we are looking at this through a single lens right now as a nation and not looking at through how China sees this. And here's what I mean by that, is China has no interest in ever going to kinetic war with the United States. But China today is at war with the United States. I believe that thoroughly. You see what they're doing in the cyberspace, in space, in the information domain, in the information environment, make no mistake about it. They are at war with us, and how they are challenging in this domain is slowly over time. You can use the frog in the pot analogy, where you're slowly boiling the water, and little things like, years ago, they would rarely have an overflight over Taiwan. Now it's every single day, and it becomes more and more normal. When they look at how they use their economy and how they pressure smaller nations to make decisions, basically forcing them to go one way or just being, poor their whole time, they use all the elements of national power except that the big M against us, because they know that's our strength. And, whether you're using a Sun Tzu quote or whatever, the bottom line is we need to wake up as a nation, as senior leaders, and realize they are challenging us there. So one day, as we're preparing for this kinetic invasion of Taiwan, one day we're just going to wake up and it's just going to be kumbaya. Taiwan is going to be a part of China. I believe that's the way this is going to happen. I just don't see them kinetically invading. It's really, really hard, first of all, to do an amphibious invasion, to take over a nation. And Taiwan has a lot of power, so there's going to be massive losses. Quite frankly, this could result in something like World War III. But I just think whenever we view this, we have to also say, how is China viewing this? And then maybe a third one is, how does the economy, how do our diplomats see this? How do our partners and allies see this as well? Yeah. But how I view it ultimately is they are at war with us today. However, they're doing it in a non-kinetic via non-kinetic means.
Yeah, it was about a year ago, something that, really sticks in my craw is this balloon that traversed all the way across the nation. And save for a bunch of rednecks in Arkansas with their Busch Light bottles and their Mossberg shotguns, it had unfettered travel all the way across the nation. What's your opinion on that? Was that a spy balloon? Was that a recon balloon? Was that China trying to, gauge our response? Or was it just Mary Poppins on a worldwide tour? What do you think, man?
Well, I don't think I know. I know for certain because I was at Space Command, and certainly this was, as it got over our nation and in NORAD territory, it was NORAD and NORTHCOM's situation to deal with. And a teammate that you and I both know, General Van Herk, had to make those decisions and recommendations to the president. Make no mistake, this was China. I don't care what they say, this was 100% China flying a device over a sovereign nation. It appears that President Xi did not know about this, and you saw a little bit after some senior movement inside of their military where some people were fired and others moved up. I don't know if that is because of this. But I have been told before that on any given day, President Xi is not thinking of anything in the military, or if he had a list of 10 priorities, number 10 might be the military. He's thinking about his economy, clean drinking water, ghost cities, and all these other things. So I don't know that he knew about this, but no one should mistake the fact that this was an element, this was the Chinese Communist Party flying a device over the United States in an attempt to gather information. Now, I also don't know what our diplomats did about this, but I don't think it was messaged back to us very well in terms of what repercussions came from this. Because I'm not happy as an American citizen, as a voter, as a taxpayer, that other nations are flying their devices over our country. And so they should be held accountable for this. And I hope they are. I just don't know.
Yeah. So I want to get into the conflict in Ukraine and Israel, but first and foremost, I want to ask you something up front before we get into that. Just again, Scott Stalker, very experienced senior enlisted leader. Does deterrence through appeasement ever work?
I read a lot. I cannot think of a case where appeasement has ever worked to deter. Strength works. Diplomacy can work. A strong economy usually does work as well, but they're all factors. But never does weakness work. You have to have strength, and I think you need to have strength across the dime, and one of those is an absolutely powerful military.
Awesome. Okay, so February of 2022, Vladimir Putin conducts the full-on invasion of Russia. As you and I both know, we've both made trips out to Ukraine. I think, there was an improvised explosive device incident out there with one of your troops, was it not, when I was the SEAC and you were over there at Cybercom, I believe. Somebody tried to throw something over the wall or something. Am I remembering that right?
Yes, you are. You are. I don't know if all the details are out, and so, but that did happen. And we've also, attachés work there. They're still there today, and those attachés fall under the Defense Intelligence Agency and work for the ambassador there. But yeah, there was some situations. I was out there, and this was, after certainly, the Crimea happened in 2014. So I was out there a little bit after, as that invasion took place. Yeah.
So now, I can't even think of the number now. It's closing in on $200 billion that, we've provided Ukraine in their fight for their sovereignty. We have as many troops in Eastern Europe now since the Cold War. What is your thoughts on the direction this conflict is going? And in your opinion, since you are on Vladimir Putin's favorite list, you are one of the guys of the, about the 100 top people that are banned from Russia. Somehow Scott Stalker, the only enlisted guy, showed up on that. So you're not a fan of Putin, and I can tell now Putin's not a fan of yours because he's banned you from his country. But where do you think this conflict is going to go? And what message do you have for our armed forces in terms of being prepared if something goes bad here?
I think that's my greatest concern, is a misunderstanding or miscommunication. Otherwise, likely this fight will continue on as long as Putin lives. And yes, he did put me on his ban list, and I took that as that to me was greater than any award I ever got. I'm in his headspace and timing there. I think, obviously there's a lot to this, and Ukraine as a sovereign, independent nation has the right to defend themselves. I would love to see other European nations step up a little bit more as well. But John, there's a lot more to unpack on this. And I think the one thing we have to look at is, how is Russia doing since this war started? And what really bugs me and what drives me nuts is we don't always get all this information. You got to dig all over the place because it becomes partisan and it's on a different party. But as an example, you look at China and you look at India. India is a partner of ours.
Yeah.
India is still purchasing fuel from Russia. And so you look at the economy of Russia, their number one export continues to be oil. Well, they're doing just fine. And so they're going to be able to continue on with this war, because you and I know they don't care about their people. So they're going to continue on with this war because they're going to have the economy to sustain just enough to keep this going. And I think as long as Putin exists, sadly and unfortunately, that's the way it's going to be. And I don't think we need to have American troops fighting this war on behalf of Ukraine. I do think I'm a believer, as long as there's accountability and as long as Ukraine is doing things the right way, that I would rather us provide them weapons and training so that they can fight their own war, and we should support them. But I don't think we should be in that fight. I think if we did get in that fight, in actual American wearing troops in that fight, I think this is it can turn into a a much broader global fight all throughout Europe, and this could be very dangerous. And I wouldn't put it past, and I always measure the will of a leader. A lot of people measure, the weapons and their troops. In this scenario, I'm measuring the will, and I think Vladimir Putin is of the mindset enough where if he had to, if his life or the regime of Russia was threatened, I view him as the person most likely to use a nuclear weapon. And so I think we got to be careful in how we approach this. But he also knows us. You talk about deterrence and appeasement. That is a deterrent, and that goes into our decision calculations.
Yeah. So do you think the troops need to be ready to fight, though, based on what you just said? Putin wants to change the trajectory of the fight, introduces a tactical nuclear weapon, or let's say he attacks a NATO nation and all of a sudden Article 5 is invoked. What's your message to the troops in terms of Russia as a threat?
I don't like this idea that we need to get ready. I like this idea that we should always be ready.
Yeah.
We should be constantly, I think, I was talking to someone in a prominent position recently, and he said, hey, my day-to-day isn't as busy as I once thought. I said, well, you need to get your intel section down there, talking to everybody about the threat every single day, reading about the threat, physically preparing, mentally preparing. That's what we should be doing as an armed force. I don't think our taxpayers and American citizens want us not being prepared. And so even if this were to end today, I think we need to be ready. History shows us wherever we're focused, then something else tends to happen. And we saw that with Israel and Hamas. You see this wherever we can be focused. Next thing you know, we have a major humanitarian assistance, disaster relief operation. And so it's not get ready. It's stay ready. It's to improve your fighting whole, and it's to be prepared for the unknown, as you say, for that worst day of your life. Because history tells us it is going to happen again. And if we are starting to prepare once that happens, it's probably too late, especially in domains of space and cyber.
Okay, let's switch gears right quick to the conflict in Israel. We all know 7 October, Hamas, violently attacked Israel, killed, approximately 1,200, killed, slaughtered, tortured, raped Israeli citizens, including elderly and children. The response from Israel has been pretty violent, and if the UN numbers are correct, about 30,000 Palestinians have been killed. But throughout all of this, Scott, as you know, we've had about 200 attacks on our troops in Syria, Iraq, and Jordan, and unfortunately on 28 January, 3 American service members were killed. So where do you think this, what's your opinion on the conflict, and where do you think it's going to go here in the future?
Yeah, that was the 7th of October, horrific day. To see, I didn't actually see, but to read about infants being beheaded and those types of things, I just think it's unbelievable. And again, I take a step back for a moment. I want to know the whole.
Does that surprise you with Hamas, though?
No, it doesn't. No, I can't say I was stunned. And I always try to also separate the organization Hamas from the people, and many of them, the Palestinians there, who have a tough situation, and so there's a lot to unpack here. But I look at, again, the greater picture, the strategic level, and I ask myself, why is Turkey not sponsoring, but you got Erdogan saying positive things about Hamas and that sort of thing, an Iran-backed organization like that. And so we need clarity of message.
Turkey being a NATO partner. Yeah.
A NATO partner. I mean, the second largest army, land army in NATO, and they're not denouncing this. You got Erdogan saying positive things there. You have, the leader of Hamas. I believe he resides in Qatar. So we aren't having a clear international message against this quite often. And I think that is why you see a lot of unrest and a lot of misunderstanding of what's going on. The fact that a terrorist organization attacked a nation, and one that was, declared by the United Nations, I believe after 1967. And I know there's a lot that's gone on since then, but after 1967, they defined the boundaries, and Israel said, Roger that, these are our boundaries and our borders. So it's horrific. And then, you get to the question you asked earlier, how is this going to end? This is going to end when Hamas doesn't exist anymore. And so they're going to go after him. I also am mindful of the fact that Israel is an ally of ours. We have an election coming up. And so there may be some asks to do certain things so that certain individuals can get votes and that sort of thing. So I try to keep track of the whole geopolitical picture and understand what's going on. But make no mistakes, horrific. Hamas, although democratically elected, they did win the vote many years ago. I think it was in 2006. A terrorist organization, no doubt. And their acts funded by Iran cannot be tolerated, period.
Absolutely. Especially when it comes to our troops, who
Right.
are in harm's way every day over there. Okay, so we've talked about long-term power competition. We talked about conflict in Ukraine, in Israel. Scott Stalker's opinion, what's the number one threat to the safety and security of the United States of America right now?
Yeah, I think there's 1A and there's 1B, or 1 and 2. And if I could explain, I think first and foremost, it is our budget and our national debt, because we can do nothing. We cannot have a military. We cannot have a nation. Well, we can't project great power if we don't have a budget for our military and if we don't have a thriving economy. And so I worry an awful lot. And I know we often punt this down the road and we put it on the future taxpayer and the future citizen. But at some point, this is going to come back to us, and we have got to have a powerful economy. And so for me, that is without question number one. We can't do anything else without a budget and an economy. Number two is really an educational piece, and that's the amount of misinformation and disinformation that's out there today. I worry so much that no one can discern what the truth is. My own family members, not my immediate family, but mom and dad see something on Facebook, they believe it true, and the next day we go and vote, and 3 or 4% of the people believe it. That could have an outcome on our election. And so I very much worry about the education of our nation when it comes to misinformation and disinformation. And I think the corporate and the private sector has to do something about that, because it's only going to get worse and harder to tell the difference about.
We're going to talk more about that, the information domain in our final segment. Last question for this segment, though, your thoughts on the southern border and what it does to the safety and security of the United States of America.
Well, John, if we don't have a border, we don't have a nation, right? And so it's disappointing. I've been down there before. I believe I've been down there with you.
You went down there with me, brother. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. I've been down there a few times, and I know you've been down there a few times as well. I just don't understand why this became a political issue. The strength of our nation, as it's stated on the Statue of Liberty, is immigration. It absolutely is. The reason we will remain a great power is because we have legal immigration. But if we have, open borders and illegal, undocumented aliens coming into the nation, they could be terrorists, they could be criminals, who knows? I just want, as a citizen, a legal way for people to come in this nation, a legal way to execute asylum quickly and justly, so that we can have a nation we're all proud of. And I venture to say that is not a really, really outrageous statement. That's where most people are, is absolutely I want immigration here. At some point, most of us did immigrate from somewhere else.
Sure.
But I want it done legally. And what we have down there right now is an absolute disgrace. And our politicians should be hanging their head in shame. I'm disappointed in them. And I've actually had a brief conversation with my elected leader here since I moved to North Carolina. As a voter, I will not accept it, period.
Awesome. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come back. And on the final segment, we're going to get Scott's opinion on the recruiting crisis for our military. We're also going to talk about what he already brought up, information, especially social media and stuff like that, and how that influences the military. And then we're going to get Scott's thoughts on leadership in this dynamic environment we've been discussing. So let's take a quick break, and we'll hear again from our friends at Downrange Supplements.
How you guys doing? I'm Colton Smith, and I'm announcing right now, Downrange Supplements is in your local commissary. If you're anywhere near a base and you have base access, get to the commissary and check out our pre-workout, our rehydration BCA formula, and our protein. I promise you, you will not be disappointed. It is the best in the market. Enlisted 9 Fight Company, my brand, is partnered with Downrange Supplements for a reason, and I tell you, their products work. And also, don't forget, we kill suckers.
Hey folks, welcome back to Leader Talk, the final segment here of today's show. I'm SEAC Retired John Wayne Troxell. My guest is still Master Gunnery Sgt Scott Stalker, career Marine, 2-time combatant Command Senior Enlisted Leader, and all-around good guy, you know. And one of the things I forgot to mention about Stalker, he was the perfect fit for U.S. Cyber Command, because that dude could break into my phone anytime he wanted to. And he used to put these damn videos on my phone and everything. So I learned a lesson, brother, that not to have my phone out when you were around. So I appreciate you showing me your skills.
You forgot to add that I actually got Sandra to join my side one time, and we did this together. So I got the wife to join me too.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, Scott, this final segment, I want to talk a little bit about recruiting. I want to talk about social media, and then I want to get your thoughts on some key leader attributes that folks in the military, especially senior enlisted, and that should have. So we know we have a recruiting crisis on our hand, and I use the word crisis because I confirmed with each of the service secretaries and the Secretary of Defense that we are in a recruiting crisis. The Army has not met its numbers the last 2 years. The Coast Guard, Air Force, and Navy didn't make their numbers this year. The Marine Corps made its numbers. And as you indicated, the Space Force made its numbers as well. Why do you think we have this crisis on our hands? And why isn't military service as attractive to this generation that it was to you and I when we were young pups?
A lot to unpack there. There's several things. I think you can't downplay the fact that we're no longer in a major conflict, and that gave us purpose. Say, I want to fight for my nation. And a lot of people now may say, well, what would I do in the military? I don't see the purpose. We have to, as a department, and veterans and leaders that are in, we have to help shape that narrative and talk about this. I had a private discussion with the Secretary of the Air Force, and I said, sir, what would you like me to do now as a retiree? And he said, continue to talk about the value of service. And I said, roger that, Mr. Secretary, of course I will. I would offer, for me personally, that was the greatest decision I ever made in my professional life, was to serve. So we got to look at that. We have to also look at, and I've seen some senior leaders talk about this, the fact that pay is not where it should be, right? The truth is, in some states, you can go flip burgers for about $20 an hour. And when you put that on someone who just has to go, they can still have, green hair or whatever they want to do or look like. They don't have to run and jump and fire a weapon or other things that they may not want to do. We have to be mindful of the economic factors and not be ignorant and say, well, just serve and suck it up. We have to be aware of that. And so I know we're looking at a quadrennial review and to see if we can really get the pay and income of our junior enlisted specifically, and quite frankly, I think all service members there as well. The other thing too, John, and this is the third point on this I'll make, is what got us there to those numbers in the past is not going to get us to the numbers in the future. We have to be aware of how people receive information and go to where they're at. Here's an example. We just had the Super Bowl, right? And I guess it was about $7 million for a 30-second ad or something outrageous. But if you think of all of the times in your life that over 100 million Americans will sit down and watch the commercials, that's the only time. All the other times we're fast forwarding through it, we're skipping them, we're paying for the extra streaming service so we don't have to get commercials. But we as a military miss the opportunity. I don't remember seeing a military commercial, and I know it costs a lot of money, but that's the only time people are watching commercials. When I drove across country, when I took terminal leave, you get the billboards out everywhere. I went to a lot of national parks, Yosemite's, Mount Rushmore, all of the big ones there, where millions of Americans visit. The only billboard I ever saw was from the United States Marine Corps. And I get it. That's just one metric. But when millions of people go there, you got to be where they are and meet them there so they know what the message is. Otherwise, they're going to say, well, why would I do that? There's so many other things as well. I think there needs to be a national call to service by our most senior leaders. And they've got to talk about the fact that we love serving. This is what it brings to us, whether you do 4 years and that's it. It's just an honor to serve and pick your service. For me, again, it was perfect. I hope my daughters will consider it when it's their time to do that, whether it's as an officer or an enlisted. But I think it really, really is the shaping and the leadership traits and the skills that one needs. So it is a crisis. It is a challenge. I think we can meet it, but we have to do things differently and not just say, hey, let's put lipstick on a pig and reintroduce this to everyone. We got to really meet the 18-year-olds where they are.
Yeah, I agree with you. Now, let's talk a little bit about social media and the effect it has on our military. Two things I want to bring up that have really upset me here recently. One was, this young airman that left his base in Fort Meade, Maryland, went to the Israeli embassy there in D.C. and decided to self-immolate, making comments that I cannot be witness to genocide and stuff like that. A young airman like that, I don't care what job he was in, obviously probably in some kind of intel job if he was based at Fort Meade and everything, but I guarantee he's never lived in the Middle East and understood that conflict and things like that. And the other one is, when something happens where a senior leader does a screwed up text, email, or something in person that is outside the boundaries of reasonable common sense, how other leaders will weaponize that and put it on TikTok, X, things like that. And in my opinion, they're doing it for clicks and everything. The effect that social media in itself, specifically TikTok and X, those contentious ones, your thoughts on that and the potential it has to drive people away from military service. Or, like in this case with the guy that self-immolated, now you got veterans out there that are protesting on behalf of this kid that are burning their uniforms, and saying, hey, it was a mistake for me to join the military. How does this social media thing play into that, and how do we need to deal with that? Your advice to leaders.
Yeah, I only know what I read online about this individual. I don't know enough of his background to understand what happened. I have to imagine anyone that's going to light themselves on fire has a mental health challenge in some case. I don't know that to be true, but I can't imagine, and I'm not going to say that I'm 100% sane, but there's no way I would do something like that. So for that, we as a department have to get our hands on social media. I know there's guidance out there. I know there's a lot of things there, but what's lacking is accountability. And the challenge here is if people are going to continue to go out on social media and burn their uniforms, which I'm not on social media except for LinkedIn, so I had not seen that. If that's happening, they're going to continue to do that. And the next time it's going to get more outrageous, and the next time it's going to get more outrageous until people are held accountable, and then we message this to the force that type of behavior is unacceptable. So I don't know, what was done to those individuals about that. But I remember 1993, a couple months into Marine Corps, and I was at Marine Combat Training there in Camp Pendleton, California, and we had an NJP. But we had a whole entire formation. This kid was busted down in rank. We did an about face, so we turned our backs on this individual, and then we marched off. And we knew this person got punished for what, and we moved on. That guy figured it out, and he actually went on to have a decent career after a minor mistake that he made. Accountability, I think, it needs to really be talked about, needs to be shown, because without that, you don't have leadership. And if you don't have leadership in this domain, we're going to continue to see more and more of the extreme until something is done to correct this.
Now, I got to bring it up, brother, since we're both retired now, but, it was while you were on active duty. A very influential news figure probably the most influential news figure, arguably, in the United States right now, made some disparaging remarks about female flight uniforms and stuff like that. And you, among others, came to the defense of our female warriors, along with some general and flag officers and other senior enlisted, that were on CNN and things like that. You posted a comment on a social media platform, and I saw all of these others, general officer, flag officers, these other senior enlisted, kind of get a pass, but Scott Stalker didn't get one. Can you kind of describe that a little bit?
Yeah, John, thank you. I've never been able to tell this story in public before, and so I appreciate this opportunity. So when that happened, I remember getting a text the night prior, the night that happened, asking me to make a response, and that was from my public affairs team. That was a show that I didn't watch. There's nothing wrong with the show, but I just didn't happen to watch that show. And so I said, okay, let me know, send me what you think I ought to talk about, and I'll make a video tomorrow and I'll put it on Twitter. And I was asked to do that because I had a really large following. I was told the largest enlisted following on Twitter. I said, Roger that. And then I got also from the DOD public affairs, the endorsement to go ahead and go forward. And so I assumed that I was being asked to do this by official authority. I also made the mistake of thinking that my commander knew about it, which I found out later he did not. And so I went in my office, I made a video, and I stood up for our women in uniform. And I did that because the American people have made a decision based on who they elect that women get to serve in our armed forces. And once you're in my uniform, in the uniform that I wear, you're a teammate of mine, a brother or a sister, it doesn't matter. And so I stood up for these women. I put that on my social media. It went viral. It went crazy. And quite frankly, that's when it turned on me. And I got really, in a little bit of trouble, if you will. I had a conversation later with my commander who did not know about it. And I was so upset and so angry about this that I said, I'm going to retire. I have dishonored, the command and the organization. I did not know that my boss didn't know about this. So I submitted my retirement. And then him and I had a conversation, and he said, listen, you did mess up. You made a mistake. I got the official counseling from that. And I learned from that. And it wasn't that what I said I disagreed with. It was how it was presented and some lessons learned there, right? So I was in uniform doing this because, again, I thought that's what I was asked to do. I should not have been in uniform. And the other thing is I should not have mentioned that individual's name. That is an American journalist who has the right to say whatever the hell he wants, whatever the hell she wants, and they have the right to say that. And that should be the end of it. No one in uniform should have come out and said anything negative in a video like I did. And so I've gone out later and I've told folks, when they're going to do something like this, make sure you're not in uniform, make sure your commander knows about it. And so there's some lessons that need to be learned there. And so, yeah, I did stay in and I retired honorably discharged. And had I had some hindsight to this, I probably would have made the video making sure my commander knew about it without using that reporter's name, because that was wrong. That was the key piece that should not have happened. And I wish it didn't happen. It did happen. I own that. I was held accountable. Quite frankly, I was holding myself accountable because I said, I need to retire. I need to be out of uniform. I shouldn't be doing this anymore. And my boss decided, hey, you learned your lesson. Let's go forward. From that point on, I have never had social media again, except for LinkedIn, for a variety of reasons. One of which is I really felt disappointed that I had done this in many ways, had taken the lead for that message, and I didn't have anyone from OSD or DOD or anywhere sticking up or standing up for me. I saw what Mr. Kirby said, and I respect him. I appreciate what he did, but that was pretty much it. And that was disappointing to me. But I learned from it, and I would say whenever I get the opportunity to talk to troops about that, I tell them about those lessons learned. Some of them disagree. Someone said, hey, you did everything right. I made those two mistakes. I didn't let my commander know. I assumed he knew, and I should not have used that individual's name. That was unprofessional of me and uncalled for.
Now, but I've got to ask you, there were some general officers and flag officers that, went about this the same way you did. And as a matter of fact, a service senior enlisted leader in uniform went on CNN and did an interview about this, okay? And they all got a pass. But Stalker, got the boots put to him. Do you feel like you were singled out there? I get it. You know, you feel bad about this. We all feel bad when we do something. You know, I was suspended for 6 months, and there were lessons I learned from that. But, you know, to me, I was already retired then. I felt you were being treated a little harshly when others were being given a pass.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would say I was going to treat myself even more harsh. I was going to take the uniform off.
Yeah.
I don't know too much about those other stories. I don't know if they had some counseling on the side enough. I don't think they did, but I can only control myself. So I don't spend a lot of time worrying about that.
Yeah.
It is odd to know that general officers and people senior to me did the same thing, and they were, you know, kind of patted on the back or whatever, and not the same for me. So it's interesting. I think what we ought to do though is learn from it and realize, hey, if you're in uniform, that's not the way to act. That's not the way to conduct yourself. Let's learn from this and move forward. And you know, again, that individual as an American, I don't care who you are. I am just a total believer in freedom of speech. If you want to say something, you have the right to do that. And then the people get to decide if they want to watch it or not. And I wish I wouldn't have used his name. And I think about that a lot. And it's something, you know, again, I've tried to learn from, teach others, and move on. So I will tell you, John, I don't know that I was incorrectly dealt with in terms of, you know, over punished or whatever. And I just don't know how they were treated. So I can't say.
Well, I will tell you, your WASTA with the force went up big time, brother. I know that wasn't what you hoped to do. You were just, you know, going after taking care of a teammate and everything. But I will tell you, the armed forces and the veteran community really appreciated your message and how you were stoic in the face of all this. So, all right. So I got to ask you, we've talked about a lot of stuff here in terms of military service, the contentious operating environment, you know, the recruiting crisis, social media and everything. Scott Stalker's opinion, what are some key leader attributes that a leader in uniform needs to have nowadays to operate into this environment that we've talked about here for the past hour? Your opinion, what are some key attributes they need?
First and foremost, you got to have that character and integrity piece. If you miss that as the baseline, nothing else will matter. And that means the integrity and the character to be able to do things that you're commanding your troops to do. If they're out on a run, you can't be hiding in the chow hall all the time. You got to be able to do that as well. And I think right after that is a bias for action. And I want to touch on that a little bit because I was talking to some Space Force Guardians, and there was this debate about whether or not they're warriors or war fighters. And I said, listen, a warrior and a war fighter is someone who's got a bias for action. And that could be someone controlling a drone from the United States of America. That could be someone fixing bayonets in a fighting hole. Have a bias for action. That's what a warfighter is. If you're an administrator, a logistician, an infantryman, it doesn't matter. A bias for action is number two. And then because of the environment we're in today, in the information space especially, you've got to be intellectually curious. You get promoted, congratulations. If you think for a moment that everything you learned in the past is enough, you're fooling yourself. Consistently learning, reading, studying, talking to young people, talking to seniors to learn from a variety of things. But I think as long as you have those three, there's certainly a lot, right? Physical toughness, mental toughness, all that. But as long as you have those three, I think you're going to be able to evolve and adapt and think critically when it's your time, so that you can lead in the environment, whether you're at a strategic level or at the pointy end. But those three things are what I would offer.
Okay, so I got a yes or no question. So the sun came up today, although, you know, here in Seattle, you know, the clouds might have covered it, but the sun did come up today.
Yeah.
True or false question is what this is. The sun came up today. We have the greatest military in the world, and you and I are not in it. True or false?
True.
Absolutely. And
yeah,
I think
that doesn't mean we can't make corrections. That doesn't mean we can't improve.
Yep.
But no one wants to mess with the United States military today. They would get schwacked, period.
And you and I will be gladly handing out coffee and donuts at the USO at the departure airfield for our warriors as they move off to get after that bias of action.
Absolutely. Well, I would cut my hair and shave and get back in the fight if they allowed it.
Hey, brother, good on you. That ship sailed on me, man. Hey, Scott, so we're coming down to the end here. And I like to end Leader Talk by giving a warrior shout out. But I want to turn this over to you. And I know there's a warrior that's on your mind all of the time and a close family member of yours. So would you mind giving our warrior shout out today, brother?
Yeah, John, thank you for this honor. There's a lot of warriors out there. You and I have buried too many teammates. Let me give you one that's closest to me, and that's my brother-in-law, my wife's brother, Specialist Joseph Brasino Jr., who in 2003 was shot in the back of the neck and was rendered a quadriplegic for life. He lived for several years after, great thanks to the great medical professionals in Walter Reed and other areas as well. But later he succumbed to his injuries, and he's now buried at Arlington National Cemetery there. This Saturday, here in a few days for me, we're going to celebrate what would be his 41st birthday. And so my warrior shout out to Jay, and again, thank you for this honor, goes to United States Army Specialist Joseph Brasino Jr.
He was wounded in Iraq, right?
He was wounded in Iraq, in Baghdad specifically. A sniper hit him in the back of the head, back of the neck, severed his spine. And yeah.
Okay. Well, hey, Scott, thanks for that shout out. And hey, thanks for being on here today, brother. Yeah,
Thank you.
It's always good catching up with you. Always good to talk the business of warfighting and nation building, but also the art of leadership. So thanks again for being here today, brother. And, hopefully soon we'll get you back on the show here and we'll talk. Maybe this time we'll get half in the bag, and then that way we can drop some F-bombs and everything and really get opinionated, brother.
Amen. I love it. Thank you again, John. Thanks for what you do. I appreciate it. Hey, I want to say one thing, and I have no authority to say this, but I'm going to say this anyways. And that's when you served as SEAC, when I knew you, I said before, if you were in the Marine Corps, you would have been a Master Gunnery Sergeant. And the reason I say that, and I would have loved to have given you that bursting bomb, is because you were both a leader and a subject matter expert. And so, again, I can't give you that rank, but I think it would be a great honor if you would take that as, hey, we would have loved to have you in the Master Gunnery ranks too.
Hey, I love it, brother. I appreciate it, man. That's truly an honor. So anyways, thanks again, Master Gunnery Sgt Retired Scott Stalker, for being here today. And thank you all out there for tuning in to this episode of Leader Talk by SEAC Retired John Wayne Troxell. We'll see you again in the future. God bless you. God bless America. God bless our troops. Boom.